Hello everyone. So today we are working on actual puzzle questions which came on INFOSYS in the past. Now there is no separate section where puzzles come on INFOSYS. So these questions are basically the ones which came on the reasoning section. But since they are in a form of a puzzle, so I'm referring to them as puzzles. Have a look at the first one. So the idea remains same. Please read the question, pause the video and try the puzzle on your own first. Later on, you can look at the solution. Now, what is the question given over here? It talks about there are four friends, A, B, C, D, and they go on a cycling trip wearing hats and goggles. Now, there is this condition given which says nobody uses his own cycle, hat, or goggles. So, what does it mean? If let's say you're talking about A, he is not going to be riding his cycle, he is not going to be wearing his hat or goggles. That is, A could be wearing, let's say, cycle from either of B, C, or D, and wearing hat again from any of these three people, and same goes with goggles. But he will not be using any of the three articles which was his. Okay. Now, the second condition says nobody uses any two or all the three items of the same person. Now, what does it mean? It means as in A. Let's say we are again talking about A. So if we want to talk about cycle, I'm assuming, let's say A was riding B's cycle. Now, if I assume A is riding B's cycle, then for goggles and hat, he cannot be wearing either B's hat or B's goggle. It is like he can only use one article of another person, and it has to be only one. Now, what is after the two condition? They talk about what exactly is A using. So at this point of time, you can do the question in number of ways, but there is a small suggestion from my end which to work, and it is going to make our life simple. That is, we are going to draw a table. So let's mark it over here on the table. There happen to be four friends, A, B, C, D. And let's just try to put the articles over here. So I'm going to make these three columns, which is going to be like for hat, cycle, and goggles. Now, let me just make the table once and then we start filling it. Now, what is given over here? A uses B's hat. Okay. So when you talk about hat, A is using B's hat. And C's cycle. Okay. So he's riding on C's cycle. And he's using D's goggle. Now, one thing you should keep in mind when you are filling this row, which is for A, all the entries would be of the form of B, C, D. I will not have an entry of A because the condition said it before. He is not going to use his own cycle, hat, or goggles. Later on, what is said over here? Then if you read this sentence, it says A's hat is neither worn by B nor by C. So talking about A's hat, it is not going to be worn by B, okay, and nor by C. Now somebody is going to wear A's hat, and that somebody now happens to be D. Okay. Now at this point of time, the given things, whatever was given in the question, we have already made the entries. At this point of time, this question asked who uses D's hat. Now to answer it, let's try to fill this row first. Okay. So what do I know? I know these entries over here for D can only be restricted to A, B, C. Now already D is wearing A's hat. So for these two entries over here, I have a choice of B or C. Now if I focus on this, let's say this entry, which is referring to the cycle which D is riding, we can very well see A was riding C's cycle. So coming to D, D cannot ride C's cycle now. So it has to be B over here. Once I make an entry of B over here, what does it mean? Now the entry over here has to be C. Now we have done with the entries for this row of D, but our question was who was using D's hat? Now to answer it, we will try to fill this column. Okay. Now when we try to fill this column, we happen to look for hats, and we already know like A is wearing B's hat and D is wearing A's hat. So the option for C over here with regards to hat was, it could be either C or D. But what do we know? That C cannot wear his own hat. So it has to be D. Now once it is a D over here, I can fill this column over here. Now for B, the only entry which I can make is, it has to be C over here. Now once I'm done with this, I have already answered this question. Who uses D's hat? So D's hat was worn by C. So my answer over here is option B. Okay, so let's have a look at the second puzzle over here. I'll suggest once again that you can pause the video over here, try to do the question on your own, and later on only compare the solution later on. Okay, so what is given in this question? It talks about there are 4 friends A, B, C, D, and they do 4 rounds of transaction. Now in the first round, what is said, that whatever money B was having and C and D were having, A is going to donate same amount of money what they were having before. As in, take an example. If let's say B was having 2 over here, rupees 2, and C was having 3 rupees, and D was having 4 rupees with him. So in the first round, A is going to donate money. That is, A is going to again donate 2 rupees to B and 3 rupees to C and 4 rupees to D. As a result, after the first round, B is going to have 4, C is going to have 6, and D is going to have 8. And who has done this donation? You can see A has donated 9 rupees to them. So whatever money, let's say I assume, let's say A was having 20 rupees with him. So he happens to donate 9. As a result, after the first round gets over, he is left with 11. Now, what is said later on, that these rounds were repeated, as in the first was A's turn and then it is going to be B's turn. What do I mean by B's turn? Now, in the second round, B is going to donate to other people. Now, since we have assumed a number as per our wish, it's not going to be like realistic at the moment, that how can B donate? He is only having 4. But we are just trying to understand what is the process over here. Okay. Later on, the same thing will be followed by C, and later on, the same thing is going to be followed by D. And they finally said that towards the end, they are left with, all of them are left with 48 rupees. And we need to figure out, this is what we were assuming, we need to figure out what exactly they had, the money they had before these transactions started. Now, why this question causes a little bit of a concern, or what is the difficulty with this question is that what the money they have at the start is not given, and then we at times start off with assuming them to be variables like xyz, wxyz, four variables. Now these four variables are going to lead to many equations and it seems to be very complex. So certainly we're not going to do it that way. Certainly we are not going to do it this way. So what are we going to do? At this point of time, we focus once again what is given in this question. Certainly what is the money they have initially is not given, but what is given in this question that towards the end they have, all of them have 48 rupees. So instead of going in the forward direction as is given in the story of the question, that it is the first the A does the thing and then B and C and then D and start making equations, we are going to go in backward direction. From the backward direction we are going to work as in they have 48 rupees towards the end and we are going to climb up the ladder. Now if we are going in this reverse direction, so let me say it like this, I'm going to write it again. Towards the end all of them had 48 rupees, and before the final step, before they are its end with all of them having 48, it was whose turn was immediately before this? It was D's turn for donation. Now if it was D's turn for donation, and if we happen to look at this, whatever money, let's say whatever money A was having, I'm assuming he was having X. So in this round, D would donate another X to A, and thereby he would be having 2X now, which is going to be 48. So since this is going to be 48, what do I know? Before this, he was having 24. That is just half of it. So can I just write it like this? A was having just half of it before, that is 24. Same thing will happen for B and same thing will happen for C. So as a matter of fact, D donated 24 to A to make it a 48, donated 24 to B to make it a 48, and same thing for C. And as a result, you can see D has donated 72 to them. Since D has donated this 72 rupees to them and end up having 48, so he was having how much before? 72 plus 48. So that is going to be 120. So D was having 120 and now things become easy. He happened to donate 72 and he's left with 48. And similarly, we're just going to climb the ladder. Whose turn was before D? It was C's turn. C was doing donation. So what was A having before? In this round, A was must be having half of it. That is going to be 12. Same thing will happen for B. And same thing will happen for D. So what is the donation made by C? You can say 12 to A, 12 to B, and 60 to D. That is 84. And after giving 84, C is left with 24. So what is the money C was having before? 24 plus 84, it has to be 108. Now, before C, it was B's turn. I hope things are getting clear now. So I'm just going to do the same. He was having half of it. He was having half of it. And he was having half of it. As a result, C's donation would be 6, 54, 60 and 30, 90 and left with 12. So C was having 102. Now before this, that was A's turn. So what was B having? Just half of it. C having half of it and D having half of it. So what did A contributed, donated? 51 plus 27, that has to be 78, and 15, 93 plus 6, so A was having 99. And this leads to the answer. What was the money they were having at the start? This is going to be my option A. So with this, we end the video. Thanks for watching the video. We'll come again with more puzzles on Infosys.